When the infamous Akasha brothers pleaded guilty in a New York court of some very serious charges, it was a signal for quite a number of people in Kenya to start spending sleepless nights. And you have to believe me, that list is pretty long. And it's also an extremely interesting list. It includes the names of very prominent, respectable judges in Kenya today. It includes the names of top, very powerful politicians in the country called Kenya. Folks, this is more than drama, bin drama, Arab drama, or a drama. Much more, believe me. As I make this video, I have information that the drug enforcement authorities in the United States have opened files on many of these prominent people. And what that means is that they're coming after them. The long and short of all this is that we should expect some very earth-shattering, shocking extraditions to take place and follow that of the Akashas. In a short while, I'll give you a bit more information about the Akasha Empire, which should be able to give you a very good understanding of how deep this organization of drug dealers went, how powerful they are in Kenya, etc., etc. And then you'll understand a bit more, what is going on here. And more so, you will be able to fully agree with me that we have reached as a country a place where we've never been before. But first, let me back up a little. Let me get out of my excitement and my shock, and let me back up a little and explain in very simple language so that you understand exactly what has gone down here. Now, the Akasha brothers did not just wake up and decide to plead guilty to these serious charges. In fact, the impression that we have been given by law enforcement authorities here in Kenya is that the investigation was so thorough, the evidence they produced was so watertight, that the Akasha brothers just gave up, and decided to plead guilty. Not true. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying the excellent work, very brave work in fact, done by investigators in Kenya. I'm not. And indeed, it is true, this played a role, but a smaller role than what we're being told. But it played a role in what has now unfolded. The truth is, the backbone of the work, the backbone of the case, the backbone of everything was done by the Americans, by the DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Authorities in the United States. The undercover agents posed as international drug dealers and approached the Akashas. That's where everything started. That's where the whole story started. And the reason why so many people in Kenya are losing sleep after the Akashas pleaded guilty is because I'm sure they've guessed exactly what happened in New York. It is all in a phrase that we have been hearing a lot here in Kenya for the first time. We have been hearing it a lot in recent times. It is something called plea bargain. The quickest and simplest way to explain that is that you plead guilty in return for a soft landing, and then you also become our informer. You cooperate with us. And cooperating involves naming names, giving details, giving evidence, generally nailing everybody who has been involved in your illegal drug business. And that is precisely what has happened. And because of this, in all likelihood, the Akashas shall never return to Kenya. Why? Because there is a ways of committing suicide. Now I can hear somebody asking, return to Kenya? I thought these guys were supposed to go away for a very long time. Well, according to the latest information, according to the deal they did, where they pleaded guilty, they're going to have sentences that are dramatically reduced. Not only that, there's another legal technicality. They're not Americans. So what will happen is after they finish their sentences, they will be taken to another country, under different identities, protected, under a kind of witness protection program. Now, the Akasha brothers have been charged alongside an associate of Indian origin, an Indian national, a man called Vijay Goswami, a former pilot. And in return for the plea bargain, the Akashas and this Bona Vijay Goswami have been singing. You know the Murphy expression, sing like a bird? This is precisely what has happened. And amongst the things that have come out, wait for this one because there's a big shock, are as follows. The Akashas, number one, the Akashas paid millions of shillings to lawyers, judges, and even junior officers in courts. The whole idea was to protect their drug business. Now I need to explain that a bit. Judges make decisions to acquit people of all charges. Okay? So you know why they got paid. Lawyers are the middlemen. They're the ones who carry bribes. They're the ones who facilitate the whole corruption. To make sure these powerful drug lords are never successfully convicted in a Kenyan court of law. Now I'm sure you're wondering about junior officers. Well, you've heard of this thing of files disappearing. Yes, that's what the junior officers do. And of course, mismanaging evidence, or rather mishandling, misplacing, etc., etc. Number two, the Akashas have also listed top respectable Kenyan judges who are on their payroll. Number three, also listed are some of the lawyers that have represented the Akashas. Files have been opened on all these individuals. Now, corruption is everywhere. Indeed, there's a phrase which says, every man has his price. However, you cannot say the same thing about these cases as what people are saying about cases in Kenya. That these cases will go nowhere. No way. If you have an inkling of how the DEA works, the dreaded DEA in the United States, then you'll know what I'm talking about. And you can also be sure that no files will disappear. And so, what you should expect is that some very important people, very respected people, will be appearing in court very soon. And the reason? I'm sure you can guess the reason. Extradition. To face the law, to face a court outside Kenya, to face a court in the United States, where files never ever disappear. Now there's something here very important that we all have to understand, so that we get a clear picture of exactly what is happening here. These networks of corruption, lawyers, judges, important people, powerful people, etc., etc., was not created in a few years. It was built and created over decades, tens of years. And this is why it is impossible to understand this story without starting at the beginning and starting with the Akasha Senior, the Don, the criminal in chief where all this started. And of course his name was Ibrahim Akasha Abdallah, the father of the two Akasha brothers who are now in New York. So let me try and move quickly, because this guy is dozier, kubwa sana. Let me try and move quickly and cover that. The father to Ibrahim Akasha Senior came to Kenya through the Sudan. He was a Palestinian, and he came into Kenya during the colonial times. We're talking about the 50s. And it is not clear why he came in through Sudan. Yeah, probably he passed there, tried to do some business, it didn't work or something like that. But finally, he decided to settle in Kenya with his family after living all his adult life in Iraq. And he settled at the coast, Mombasa. Now, Ibrahim Akasha Sr. was one of his sons, yeah, and he excelled in business. He set up a transport business, Akasha Transport. And the business prospered very quickly and became huge, yeah. And later Akasha sold this business to the government of Kenya. Now that business is still in existence today, and it's called Kenatco. After selling off Kenatco, Akasha Sr., Ibrahim Akasha, became an arms dealer. Yeah, started supplying guns. And there was all kinds of warfare going on all over the region, and that business also prospered. Now, of course, there's no way you can do such a business without very powerful connections, yeah, right inside government. But then something went wrong. Yeah, he started getting competitors. Some people got greedy, and he was forced out of this business. And so he decided to go into drugs. And so he revived Akasha Transport. But this time, Akasha Transport was just a cover. And indeed, it was the perfect cover. Yeah, because with a transport company in Mombasa, you have links to the port, yeah, where you collect your consignment of drugs hidden inside furniture or something like that. And then you're also able to transport it all over the country, yeah, without detection. And Ibrahim Akasha became very wealthy, stinking wealthy, and very powerful. But he remained very careful and invisible. And of course, his contacts within the highest level of the Kenyan government remained. And in fact grew and spread all over the place until he became one of the most powerful people in the country by far, even when there were very few people in the country who had ever heard of the name Akasha, let alone knowing how powerful he was. In 1992, wait for this one, he was the main financier by far, yeah, of President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi's campaign for the presidency. Yeah, you remember 1992 was the first multi-party elections in Kenya since 1963, and there was a very vibrant and popular opposition, and Moi was fighting for survival. Yeah, Akasha Sr. was one of the chief campaign sponsors. He came in handy. Yeah, he saved the day for Kanu and Moi, and yet his name appeared nowhere. Yeah, and so he was able to become even more untouchable. And it was at the height of his power that Akasha made his very first fatal mistake. There was an assistant commissioner of police known as Bwana Kalume Chai. Yeah, he happened to go to the Akasha residency to inquire about a kidnapping, which he was investigating. And what did Akasha do? He kidnapped the cop. This was in 1995. And he held him there for long hours. I think probably to teach him a lesson. Yeah, so that the cop knows who Akasha is. And he probably guessed in his mind, this was a nobody. This was a small-time cop. And yet he had connections and links to the highest level of government. So he probably thought it was a small thing. However, this single action rubbed some very powerful people the wrong way. Yeah? And I'm talking about the intelligence community, the people who look after security of the state. It alarmed them. I mean, wouldn't it alarm you? Yeah? If a private citizen can actually kidnap a senior police officer? To quote a Kamba expression, "O kamono," loosely translated, he crossed the line. Now, you know the intelligence community in any country are thinkers, yeah, and they plan things very carefully, very meticulously. They will never act out of emotion, yeah. And so, to the shock of very many people, in 1996, Akasha was arrested and arraigned in court. Very many people are puzzled why he was arrested. To date, they are still puzzled. I mean, he was so powerful. And they were even more confused when, predictably, the case went nowhere and he was acquitted. Let me explain. The whole idea of arresting him was not even to get him successfully convicted. It was to do a very simple thing, to bring him out in the open, to expose him, so to speak. Yeah, and that was not a small thing, because as I'll tell you shortly, that was the beginning of the downfall of the Akasha empire. Because for the first time, people now knew there was a drug dealer called Akasha who operated in Mombasa. Information that had never been in the public domain before. And according to plan, from that first arrest, the slide downwards for Akasha was swift. Yes, his tentacles were spread all over the judicial system, the police, senior government officials, everybody who mattered. Indeed, it was the same network his sons inherited, and built up the drug business after his death. It is the same network that is going to be exposed and brought down by the DEA shortly. Akasha Sr. himself, of course, died in a very dramatic and gory way, very far away from Kenya, in Amsterdam, Holland. It was a hit from one of his associates from a drug deal that went wrong. He was with one of his 3 wives, Hayat, an Egyptian. Some guy just came up to him cycling as he was walking the streets, going to meet the very person who ordered the hit on him. And that cyclist pumped 4 bullets into his head, 2 into his heart, and 1 in the stomach. A total of 7 bullets. And he died there in the streets of Amsterdam, in the arms of his confused and weeping wife. His body was brought back to Kenya and buried in Kenya, and his sons continued with the business. But now it is very clear that the Akasha empire is finished. Now, before I go, there's one very important thing I want you to take note of, which should have been obvious, but let me just say it. It is clear that from Akasha's influence, Akasha Sr., and the fact that he started this business, he was a founder of the drug business in Kenya, because of those facts, it's very clear that there's no drug deal which could have taken place or which can take place today in East and Central Africa that has got no links to the Akasha family. No way. And this is why the Akashas became of such great interest to the DEA, all the way in America, very far away from Kenya. Because it is common knowledge that the East African coast, and Kenya especially, is a major transit point for drugs that end up in the West. So the DEA strategy is very simple. They're trying to kill the source. Kill the source and the drugs will not arrive in the States. It's as simple as that. Now, dealing with the major transit point is a major issue for Kenya. Why? Because the people involved in this business in Kenya are very, very big untouchable people. At least 2 sitting governors, a former governor, several MPs, the wife of a former president, etc., etc. I think you get my gist. Bringing down these cartels is going to have very far-reaching repercussions right across the country. And you can be sure the DEA are very serious. I believe now you fully understand why the number of people in Kenya today who cannot get any sleep at night is extremely high. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.